satchel to his left hand and balled his right into a fist the size of a cannonball. I can always tell the judge I couldn't tell if they were white or black in the dark. He took off his hat, and that annoyed him too. If it came to fighting, he'd probably lose it, and it was new. The old one had been demolished by a gang of drunk upriver Kentucky ruffians who'd cornered him one night last October on his way back from playing at a ball. Hat and satchel in his left hand, right hand freed and ready, heart hammering in his breast, January put his right shoulder to the theater wall and moved forward again. He'd seen no forms silhouetted against the street's dim glow. Only one niche broke the 100 feet of brick theater wall between him and the alley mouth, the door from which stairs ascended to the slaves section of the gallery, and the half-tier of boxes reserved for the free-colored. He cursed himself. Why couldn't he remember if there were 2 or 3 doorways in the wall of Cheney's cotton yard on the other side, or where they were, after all the times he'd been up and down this alley? Cursed himself, too, for coming back to New Orleans at all, to a town where he could be beaten up by white men with impunity. Wondered, for the 1,000th time since coming back 30 months ago, why he hadn't stayed in Paris. Going insane from grief couldn't be that unpleasant, could it? The creak of boot leather, in touching distance of his own long arm. Stale sweat, stale liquor, dribbled tobacco spit, and long abiding dirt. Beside him in the dark. Behind him in the dark. Nothing. To turn and look, much less to break into a run, would invite attack. His breath sounded like a bellows in his own ears, and his heart like a bambula drum. Nothing. The dim radiance from the street strengthened before him. Still no squish of striding boots in the horse-shit-smelling black stillness at his back. Not even a spit-warm wad of tobacco juice on the back of his neck. He slid out into the flame-dotted murk of Camp Street and turned immediately right, taking shelter behind one of the marble piers that flanked the American Theater's front stairs. At that point, he reflected later, he should simply have crossed the street and made his way back to his lodgings in the old French town on the other side of Canal Street, like a good, uninquiring nigger should. Then he would have been able to say, with perfect truth, I know nothing of murder. I know nothing of blood. I know nothing of why anyone would crush skulls or burn buildings or try to kill me and my friends in the dark. But the circumstance of not being attacked, not even spit on by at least 2 drunk river rats at 3 a.m. in a back alley, was so unusual that January set his hat and music satchel safely out of the way on the marble steps, settled himself farther back into the pier's inky shadow, and waited to see who they were after. And in doing so, almost certainly saved Lorenzo Belaggio's life. The 8 gas lamps that so brilliantly illuminated the theater's facade earlier in the night. Its owner, James Caldwell, was also part owner of the new municipal gas works, were quenched. Now and then a carriage rattled by, driven full speed by improbably costumed Mohicans or musketeers on their way to one last drink, one last round of faro or 21, after whatever party or ball had occupied their evening. But no one gave him a glance. A blue-uniformed representative of the city guards, January supposed, would be along shortly to demand an account of his business so long after curfew, and a look at the papers that proved him a free man. But before that could happen, he heard a man shout, Dio mio! And then, Merdones! Assassini! And recognized the Milanese voice of the impresario who'd spent the evening taking orchestra and company through the first rehearsal of his new opera, Othello. January lunged to his feet, down the alley, hearing rather than seeing the flopping, wrenching suggestion of struggle, the thud of bodies on the brick walls, and the grunt of impact. Then he smelt blood. He grabbed the nearest form. Coarse wool and greasy hair slithered under his fingers, heaved the man off his feet, and flung him toward Camp Street. Indistinct forms writhed in the murk. A man shrieked in pain. He grabbed again, slipped in the muck of horse shit and rainwater. Edged metal bit his arm. He seized the attacker's hand.